Thank you very much. First of all, historically, the term food security emerged in 1974 at the World Food Conference in Rome, and now it's almost 36 years and we haven't fully dealt with the food security. Now we are broadening the concept to food and nutrition security, which is a much more complex and difficult order, but it's timely because food security without nutrition security does not achieve its objectives. Even if you provide adequate food, but it's not balanced and doesn't contain all the elements of health and nutrition, then you're not in real terms achieving food security. So in that sense, I think the broadening is necessary. In the case of South Asia, of course, the reason is poverty. The total half the world poor are here, and food and nutrition insecurity is related to income and poverty level, as well as absence of adequate interventions both in health and nutrition. In Pakistan, we had a Prime Minister's task force on food security 3 years ago, which I chaired in the wake of the crisis in 2007 and 2008 because of higher prices. And we took this holistic cross-cutting view to deal with the food security issues. The basic conclusion that report presented, of course, traditionally ever since the food crisis of the 70s, most government, when talk of food security, they talk of major crops, wheat, rice, and some of those. Whereas nutrition and balanced nutrition depends basically on a much larger basket of food items, and they are mostly what are called value-added crops because they are the ones which balance. You provide milk and pulses and edible oils and all the other elements. The problem with the value-added crops is that the more value-added it is, the more perishable it is. Milk is the most perishable is the most valuable item, and it goes bad in 10 hours if you don't keep it in cold. Some others are 2 days, 3 days, 20 days, unlike a bag of wheat that can lie there for a whole year. So the task of handling value-added crops involves post-marketing systems from better procurement plus cold chains which will keep them, and therefore the wastage is much larger. And a small farmer who produces high-value crop, unless he's living near a city and can bring vegetables on his head in a basket, the whole system of food management becomes much more difficult. So that is where the role of the private sector becomes more important. And therefore, while we are talking of cross-sectional work among ministries and government agencies, I think the role of the private sector, government has to provide incentive, it has to provide laws for food safety, but the actual task of building those post-harvest systems, marketing, transport, storage, and then, actually selling it through various kind of facilities is very important. The other area which I think where the whole issue of awareness and advocacy and capacity building becomes highly important is the importance of clean water. Because the Chinese, I'm sure most of you are aware, do not drink unboiled water. That was their forefathers told them 2,000 years ago that unboiled water is bad for you. So their tea is actually an invention so that they can drink boiled water. So their incidence of waterborne diseases is much less. Whereas in our case, 50% of the poor people are exposed to unhygienic water, and that is the cause of a large number of undernutrition as well as diseases, which does not allow the food to be converted into nutrition as it should. So there again, a great deal interventions are required policy level. So it is a very long agenda, and the more comprehensive you make it, the more difficult it becomes. So in each situation, the analysis shows you the critical paths for policy work, legislative work, interventions, and the follow-up through private sector and investments. How do we do it? And therefore, every 5-year plan should have a chapter on food and nutrition security. Every annual budget should have, and hopefully periodic high-level meetings should also review the progress. And another important element, of course, is database. If you know what is the problem in the situation, then your ability to handle those problems become much easier. So it's a good start that the international community is making here, and I hope at the national level there will be a corresponding response to these challenges so that each country has a sound well-managed, balanced food and nutrition security strategy, which can be implemented in a holistic way and a multidimensional way. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Aziz. Let me ask you, Tim Wheeler. You have been listening to the panelists so far. You are with DFID, the Sector Director for, Deputy Chief Scientific Advisor. DFID is supporting this initiative. Why do you think that this initiative is so important for you to support?
Thank you, Roger. For some time now, DFID have wanted to develop a partnership with the World Bank and between donors in order to support countries in South Asia to take effective action to improve nutrition and nutritional outcomes. Our Secretary of State has been very much enthused with the nutrition story recently. His attendance at UNGA in September led to a resurgence of interest within the department to take action on nutritional outcomes. The platform, hopefully, will provide a long-term support to changing nutrition in the region, a platform that donors can stand together to support in these countries. And my colleague Lizzie Smith, sitting at the front here, will be happy to hear from those in the audience who would like to contribute to SAFANSA. So I think it fits very much with much of the incentives that, and directions of change we've been hearing along the panel, and of course also with some of the high priority policy areas that DFID wishes to support.
Very good. Thank you very much. Mikhail Wachowski, you are my World Bank colleague, and you get the final word for this first little round of questions. I wonder, to what extent you working on nutrition and food security and human development angle in South Asia, to what extent has this impacted your agenda on human development?
Oh, hugely. I'm happy you asked this question because it was such an eye-opener to start working on South Asia and looking at nutrition indicators. And I thought at the time why I had not thought about it before. And I realized that in order for the world to help South Asia to deal with the nutrition issues, we need to absolutely make sure that the nutritional status of children in South Asia is known worldwide. So it impacted me how it's important to think outside your narrow confines. But also, in the process of creating SAFANSI, I was reflecting on challenges that this poses to interdonor cooperation and to the work inside the bank. The cross-sectoral aspect David Nabarro was talking about and other colleagues in the panel, this is extremely difficult to do even within our institution. And SAFANSI offers us a platform to do it actually across colleagues working in agriculture, working in health, working in social protection, water and sanitation, working with donors together. It's not always easy. We have a tendency to work separately. Given the exceptional nature of the challenge, after all, 340 million people are hungry persistently on a routine basis in South Asia, I think raising to the occasion has an enormous importance for us feeling that we are delivering on our mission to fight poverty. But there is one more aspect here, which is that both, I think, in the bank, most of us, and I certainly try to think about us and about me as actually being a reformer, changing things, doing things together, and applying the lessons from other successful social reforms that required cross-sectoral approach to nutrition is a challenge that is yet to be met. And we are in a wonderful position to help this happen.
Do you think there's a special role then for multilateral institutions like the World Bank or other development banks or other financial institutions to promote this cross-sectoral work?
Absolutely, there is.
And what is the best way for them to do that?
I think the best way for them to do that is, first of all, to listen to what the countries tell us. But second is really to carry across best practices. If we know that for a reform to succeed, certain things need to happen, like champion at the high level, like ability to learn from the evidence on the ground and create feedback loops that improve on interventions, like the fact that it is often advisable that those who deal with the change process, new approaches to nutrition, do not necessarily be the same people who deal with day-to-day management of current programs, because it's very difficult sometimes to see outside the box if you are inside the box. If we, and by we I mean the donors, with our different knowledge, know those things, we can hugely help, I feel, by bringing this experience across countries. And sometimes it is just across neighbors. Sometimes it's across continents. But I think there is a role to play by the nature of our work.
Very good, thank you. Dr. Reddy, I wanted to turn to you again, because one of the issues on the human development side is the gender question, the gender issue. And it's critically important, the role of women, obviously, caretakers, mothers in the first 2 years of life. But I wonder, what do you think is the role of women, and how should we place that role front and center on this agenda? What should Safansi be doing to promote that?
Well, when you're talking about women, and particularly in the context of nutrition and health, there is a intergenerational carryover of disadvantage. There is a life course carry-through of disadvantage. You're looking at an endangered fetus who grows into an undernourished girl child, to an anemic adolescent, to a poorly fed pregnant woman, whose own developmental disadvantage results in a small pelvic size and inadequate placental blood flow, and that has to nurture another endangered fetus. So that is how the intergenerational disadvantage continues, and now we know, even from the modern knowledge of epigenetics, that this disadvantage is not confined to one generation, but can carry through to several generations because of modification of gene expression, which is entirely acquired. Then, even in the life course, we recognize that from early childhood, when the child is obviously susceptible to a variety of infections, cognitive impairment, poor physical growth, and of course, disadvantaged pregnancy, but later on even to susceptibility to chronic diseases like diabetes and cardiovascular disease. So we are seeing a plethora of health effects because of this. And the girl child is particularly vulnerable because of not only the additional needs of pregnancy and lactation and adolescent growth that are neglected, but even the basic nutrition is often disadvantaged because of gender bias. Now, in terms of empowerment, if that is the ultimate goal, we have to really look at empowerment beginning at birth, greater access to education, translating into removal of all barriers to education, including the availability of separate toilets at schools and so on and so forth. All these are important issues which are barriers. But then the availability, access to livelihoods, access to credit, income, access to credit, physical and financial freedom, the freedom to move about, the freedom to engage in livelihoods, the freedom to contribute to family income, and thereby have a greater bargaining power in the family negotiations. All these have been shown to be important not only for the women, but women with greater financial and physical freedom in a study in Andhra Pradesh have been shown to have less stunted children. So even from the point of view of their ability to feed children, the ability to prioritize who gets what in the family, all of these are substantially influenced by women's ability to engage in productive livelihoods. So whether in agriculture or industry or microfinance, all of these are areas that we need to look at in order to look at how women can be empowered. And of course, supplemental programs in terms of health literacy, nutritional literacy, supplemental programs in terms of actually providing adolescent girls and pregnant women with supplemental nutrition, particularly in a country where anemia is very widely prevalent, both in children and in women in reproductive age group. All those are essential. But unless some of these social determinants are addressed, we are not going to see women's empowerment in a larger dimension. And that is where I believe we must see gender actually being mainstreamed in all health and developmental programs, not as a matter of post facto rehabilitation, but proactively planning their participation in all developmental programs.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Aziz, you talked about food security not necessarily being nutrition security, but I wonder if you could give us your comments, your thoughts on the current one major issue which is facing the world, is rising food prices, and the link between those rising food prices and what you call nutrition security.
This is a very serious issue because this means that even if food becomes available, you do not achieve food security because the food is priced out of the purchasing power of the low-income groups. And this is a secular trend. I don't think it is like happened in the 70s. It will reverse itself, because in the last 40 years since the Green Revolution, the entire agriculture technology was based on maximizing the use of fertilizer to get higher yields. And at that time, oil was $10 a barrel, or even less. And so the cost of converting energy into productivity and agriculture was much less. Now with oil going to 70, 80 and tending towards $100 a barrel, the entire cost of producing food through those technologies has become excessive, and you cannot get food in those prices. So what we need is, on the one hand, agriculture technologies that are less energy intensive, organic agriculture and so many other things. And plus, we need to diversify the entire food production chain from wheat, rice, where this thing is more important, to more high-value crops, particularly grown by small farmers, because that also increases the income much more, because the per acre income from those crops gives income. If some small farmer has 1 or 2 acres, he can't survive on maize or even rice or wheat. So it serves a double purpose. So in this case, I think and in Pakistan, for example, the increase in the price of those high-value crops, which are more important for nutrition, have gone up even at a higher rate than the price of wheat, for example. Dal, which is such a staple item for the poor man, pulses, is now 120 to 140 rupees a kilo, which is pushes it beyond the realm of the... So the research in those areas to increase productivity and bring down the prices is now becoming more important than increasing the yield of wheat and rice. So I think, and of course with water scarcity coming and global warming, we also need less water-intensive crops to that extent. So I hope that the scientists here, when we are talking of food and nutrition security, the scientists who deal with agriculture and food technologies have a very major role in dealing with this problem. Otherwise, we may produce more, but we may not achieve a corresponding improvement in food and nutrition security.
Tim Wheeler, I'm going to come to the audience in a minute because we wanted to have some questions or comments from the audience. But Tim Wheeler, I wonder, you have an audience, a room full of development practitioners in front of you, people who are specialists in this area of food and nutrition security. What do you want these people to do when they walk out of the room after this session? What's the one practical thing that they could do that could advance this agenda in your view?
Yes, now that could be a wide-ranging answer. For those within the donor community, then I think if you wish to be involved with this program, as I hope you would want to, then see Lizzie Smith, see how you can get involved, how we can make this a long-term and sustainable initiative. For those within the research community, I think there are some important points that have been made on the panel, and I'd like to add a couple to those. The cross-sectorial aspect of this problem is a difficult one. It doesn't fit with the usual objectives that the research community like to work towards. It doesn't fit with their incentives. Those tend to be based more along disciplinary lines. So we've got a proven record, I think, of the success of research products in the different pillars of food and nutrition security, in food availability, in food access, and in food utilization. But now we need to pull it together, and this is what this conference is about. So we need to be thinking of new ways of working, of getting knowledge generation and getting knowledge into practice, and improving the evidence base of policies in this cross-sectorial topic. I'd like to just announce one small incentive to help that process here. DFID will be issuing a call as soon as we've finished this meeting almost for a new research program consortia on agriculture, food and nutrition security in South Asia. So we will be providing a small incentive to provide new multi-sectorial research programs to address these cross-sectorial projects. You can get more information on the DFID website.
Very good. Thank you. Very good. Thank you. I wanted to leave a little time for questions or comments from the audience. You've been hearing the panelists on this very important issue. If you have a question or comment, do we have microphones? Or
This one.
My name is Emile Frison. I'm the Director General of Biodiversity International, CGR Center dealing with agricultural biodiversity and the role it can play in improving nutrition. I was very pleased to hear about this initiative, which I think is indeed addressing a very challenging issue, but particularly about the comments made by Dr. Aziz and the need to change agriculture, because I think the health sector has approached malnutrition essentially from a medical point of view of fixing the problem after the problem has occurred. But we can continue doing that, but unless we change what agriculture can contribute to nutrition, i.e. the proper nutrients that people need to avoid malnutrition, we will be in an eternal cycle of repeating. So I think bringing in agriculture is very important, but we must realize that that means changing policies in agriculture quite radically. If you look at the fact that the three major suppliers of energy, wheat, rice and maize, that provide 60% of the calories of human intake, represent more than 90% of the investment in research at the global level. I think that's where the problem lies. Policies, fertilizer policies, geared specifically at those major crops at the expense of vegetables and minor pulses and other crops. So there has to be a real change if we want to fix the nutrition problem in the longer term and do it in a sustainable way. Agriculture has to be revolutionized, and I hope that this conference, and maybe through this initiative also at the regional level, we can make a significant step towards that. Thank you.
No, I think it's good.
Good afternoon. This is Purushottam Mainali from Nepal. In fact, my concern is also on his line. So now I'm very glad to see that the food and nutrition security are together. But in reality, in real term, I think the two professional folks in this area, the agriculture sector people, agriculture professionals, they work for food and they are not very much aware of the nutrition security aspect. And the health sector people, they don't worry much about the food aspect. So the one goes on continuing the production of food, you see they don't care about what is in and what is its contribution in the nutrition security. And the health people, so they always see the concentrate on the curative aspect. So the fortified, the mineral supplements and other. So now again coming back to now we are see that this very good initiative to bring these very needy two sectors together, and the initiative, this is the developing initiative approach and strategy. And for this, let me start with the food. Even in the food also, as it has been said by the previous speaker, that food means just the cereals, 2-3 crops, and we don't care about the other produce which has major contribution in the nutrition security, like pulses, livestock products, and the vegetables, fruits, and others. So that has to be very much established in this plan and the initiative. Not only those commodities, but there is big loss due to the various the emerging diseases and the pest. So something like if we would have prevented the avian influenza, we would have saved millions of tons of chicken meat, similarly mad cow disease and others. So those emerging diseases and the transformative diseases and economic important disease has the significant importance on food and nutrition security. And again, coming back to the nutrition security, I think this equally the production aspects and its implication to the nutrition security has to be equally recognized. Now coming back to the monitoring system. So this is the strategy part, policy part, and the monitoring part we have the monitoring of the food security, again very much concentrated on the cereals. And the other group, nutrition security, is very much concentrated on the health issue only. So we have to now design the combined monitoring and evaluation system, which is also lacking till date. Thank you very much.
Okay, very good, thank you.